So with 24-hour time, can anyone tell me what the structure is for 24-hour time? It's how many digits? 4 digits. So when we've got 8:25 a.m., we need to write it as 0825. There's no AM, PM written. There's no decimal point written. Right? It's just literally 4 digits. Can anyone tell me what they use? How would they write 3:45 p.m.? What's the... Yeah, 15:45. So how do you know it's 15:45 and not something else? Yeah, 3 hours after the 12. So that's really the best way to look at that. And then anything that's after 12 is PM, 1200. So 16:15, what's that? Yeah, 4:15 p.m. And how do I know that? Because 16 take 12 is 4. All right, let's try these few worded ones. Let's go. This time. So how do we do that? What's the best way to add 45 minutes to this time? We could add 40 and then 5, probably. Yeah, yes. Yeah, add 5, 20, 20. I would be going, go to the hour. It is much easier to go to the hour. So if we go to 0300, we've actually added 25 minutes. Remember, it's 60-minute lots. And then we can add the extra 20 to get our 45. So 0320. So rather than try and add 45 to 0235, that's a bit tricky, because if you add 45 to 35, that's going to take you to 80, which is more than an hour, and then it gets confusing. So my suggestion is bridge to the hour. So if you go from 0235 to 0300, and then however long you need. So sometimes you might see that like that as a bit of a flow chart. Okay. When we talk in 24-hour times, we do say 2400, even though we mean 60 minutes. All right, time zones, moving on. That's just a quick recap. Shh. Year 12s, stop talking amongst yourselves, paying attention. That was a quick recap because what we're about to do involves 24-hour time, particularly when we look at examples involving flights and so forth. So time zones is the main focus for today. What's that about? What is a time zone? We've got different times. Yeah, it does link to the sun and the rotation of the earth on its axis, but not necessarily. Where our focus is for today's Australia, we'll do world time zones next time I see you. But when we talk about a time zone, it is basically different, different time frames across different parts of the world. And in Australia, what is our focus? How many time zones do we have?
3, 4, 5.
3. We've got 3 formal time zones. What are they called?
Eastern.
So we've got Australian Western Standard Time, which is what we do. Australian Central and Eastern. Now we also do have, and here they are listed here actually, we also do have daylight saving. So sometimes you'll see Australian Central Daylight Saving Time and Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time, and that'll come up next. But in WA we don't have daylight saving. So, okay. So basically for us in Australia, yeah. Good question. Yeah, don't know, just is. Australian Western Standard Time. Mate, is that because of daylight saving?
Mate, that's
Australian.
would be standard.
So to distinguish between standard compared to daylight saving. Although daylight saving is something that's come out. So basically, what it is why would you do it? It's to gain more sunlight later in the day, more light later in the day. So it allows. Well, you can't change the sun. That's why you change the time.
But no, that's not how time works.
So because I mean the way our times have been set up, that's been back from I don't know how long ago, long time ago, and so it allows more sunlight in the evening for families to do things, for people to do things. You know, like at 6 o'clock it's dark, and it just gives you that opportunity for some families, people, that opportunity to do stuff after work, after school, that kind of thing, without it being dark. But you do get, that means the mornings are darker. But over summer, usually, like in WA, I know, in summer, in peak of summer, 5 o'clock in the morning is light, right? It's light enough. But that wouldn't occur if we had daylight saving, that light wouldn't occur till 6. So you put the clock back an hour so that you can get that extra time in the day. We don't have it in WA, mostly because farmers, we have a lot of farmers don't particularly like it because that means they have to get up earlier, the animals actually don't know that we're on daylight saving time, so they still need to have, if the cows need to be milked at 4 a.m, then they'll have to go.
Where's the time go?
You actually lose an hour. You actually just lose an hour of time, and then you gain it back when you change from daylight saving to normal. Sorry. Well, that's why people don't like it. There's people that don't like it. That's why, like we were saying, like the farmers don't like it for that reason. People that have to get up early in the morning, shift workers, they don't necessarily like it, or the ones that have to work early in the morning don't like it, because it means they're getting up an hour earlier. Yeah. You'd have to come to an hour early. then normal. Well, it's not. It's the same time, but effectively, body clock time is an hour earlier. Yeah. Okay. So in Australia, in WA, if we say based on WA time, South Australia, and the Northern Territory have the same time. They are 1.5 hours ahead of us, and Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania are 2 hours ahead of us. So if we talk about WA, obviously if we lived in the east, we'd be talking about how WA is 2 hours behind us. Right, and it comes from the fact that the sun rises, here's some science in there, sun rises in the east, sets in the west, so they'll get the sun sooner. So you would expect them to be ahead of us in terms of time. Yeah, quickly. All right, so for example, let's have a look at this. If it's 9 o'clock in Perth, what time is it in Darwin? So in Darwin, 1.5 hours later, so 10:30, very good. Be specific though, make sure you put AM and PM or 24-hour time. If it's 2 p.m. in Sydney, what time is it in Adelaide? So Sydney is in New South Wales, somewhere around about here, maybe slightly lower. And Adelaide is in South Australia, capital of South Australia, I don't know, somewhere around there too.
1:30.
So half an hour less, yeah. So 1:30 p.m. So why? So because Sydney's in New South Wales, so they are ahead of time. +2 from Perth, from WA. So that's 1.5 away. So from here to here, so from Central Time to Eastern Time, it's a half an hour difference. So if it's 2 o'clock in Sydney, then it's going to be half an hour less in South Australia at 1:30 p.m. All right, next example, true story. I had to ring the Australian Maths Trust. Could I wait till 3:15 to do it? Because that's what I wanted to do. Example C, part C.
You couldn't.
Where's Canberra?
Over east.
Over east where?
In ACT,
which is within?
New South Wales.
Within New South Wales, thank you. So within New South Wales, if I ring the Australian Maths Trust at 3:15 p.m. WA time, what time is that going to be in New South Wales? It's going to be 5:15, 2 hours later. Emily, I'll come to you in a minute. It's going to be 2 hours later, and they close at 5. So would I get there? Would I get in contact with someone? The answer is no. It's going to be too late because they're 2 hours ahead of us. And their 5 o'clock is at when we are at 3 o'clock. And this is a problem with daylight saving when the east is 3 hours ahead of us, right? Yeah, so you've all got to be careful of that kind of thing too. So if you have like meetings with the eastern side of Australia, but not Queensland because they don't have daylight saving, but Victoria, New South Wales, that kind of thing, then you've got to allocate a 3 hour difference. So if they decide that their meeting's at 9 in the morning, then in WA you've got to get up and be ready at 6 in the morning. Well, the government decides, the government of the state government, I would suggest, decides when it starts and when it finishes. And what's more confusing, sometimes it's not the same start date and end date. All right, so Emily, I'll come and have a look. Across time zones, it is best to stick with one time zone, just makes it a bit easier. And then revert back or change at the end. So if I look at this question, for example, where I've got Alana leaves Perth at 1500 hours, and when she gets to Hobart at Perth time, that's going to be 5 hours, 45 minutes later. Now, if we stick with Perth time to start with, 1500, 5 hours, 45 minutes later, it's going to be 2045. That's Perth time, yep. So then if we go now, that's Hobart. So what's that going to be at Hobart time? So what time? Yeah. So 22:45 or 10:45 p.m. So 2 hours later, we've got to add 2 hours because we are now in the Australian Eastern Standard Time Zone. All right, let's try the next one. That one there, she needs to turn on. And this, obviously, we need to know. These things happen, right? People that like to watch live stuff, if it's live at a certain time over east, then we've got to know what time it starts here in Perth, or vice versa, if you're living over east. All right, let's try the next one. So what time will it be? 21:45. It will be 11:05 p.m. What's that? 23:05. So that's Melbourne time. So now Adelaide, what can we say about Adelaide? So half an hour earlier in Adelaide, because we're going back. So 22:35, and that's going to be Australian Central Standard Time. 10:35, yeah. There's a bit of a spiel there about daylight saving. We've already spent enough time talking about it, but basically, yeah, the clocks go back and then your time zones change. Now, WA, and this is where it gets quite confusing, because WA, Northern Territory and Queensland don't do daylight saving. And so as a result, they would all be normal time, standard time. And then these two states, or these four states, do daylight saving, and they will be, compared to WA, so if we start, this is compared to Victoria and New South Wales, but if we look at WA, if WA was at 0 time, then you've got 1.5 hours for Northern Territory, but only but 2.5 hours away for South Australia, and then you've got 2 hours away for Queensland, but for every other place it's 3 hours difference. And so it makes it really tricky. So you've got to know what state you're in, whether it has daylight saving or not, if it's during daylight saving time, and then you can then decide the difference in time. So all of these questions are assumed daylight saving time, which is across, usually starts end of October or thereabouts and finishes in April or thereabouts. So relative to Perth, that'll be 0. This will be 1.5 hours later. But in Adelaide, it'll be 2.5 hours. In Queensland, it'll be only 2 hours because they don't have daylight saving. But in these other states, they're all 3 hours, all of them, because they do have daylight saving. So that's probably more helpful rather than this little flowchart I was trying to draw here. So basically it's an hour more for the states that have daylight saving, that they're ahead of us. So going back to the December in Adelaide, what time is it in Perth? So Perth is 2.5 hours behind Adelaide during daylight saving. So 2.5 hours behind. So if we go 2 hours back, it'll take us to 8:20. Half an hour back should take us to 7:50. So 3 hours and 25 minutes Perth time. So because the times don't marry up nicely to the hour, girls at the back, thank you. My suggestion, you don't have to do it like this. My suggestion is you've got to add 3 hours and 25 minutes. Go to the nearest hour, which is 10 minutes to midnight. Then 3 hours gives me 0300. And then I need 25 minutes, not 10. So add another 15. I arrive in Melbourne 3:15, or Ruby arrives 3:15, 0315 Perth time. That's the Perth time, so that's what her family will know. If she were to call them the minute she arrives, it will be 3:15 Perth time in the morning. However, when you arrive in Melbourne, that local time is 3 hours ahead of Perth time. And hence Melbourne time will be 6:15 in the morning, or 0615. All right, so then looking at this one, the trip takes 4 hours and 55 minutes. It is easier to bridge to the hour. You can do 4 hours on top of 1340 if you want. Up to you. I prefer to bridge to the hour, go straight to the hour. That's 20 minutes to 2 p.m. 4 hours later takes me to 6 p.m. But the trip's 55 minutes on top, so I've only used up 20 minutes. I've got another 35 here. So it takes me to 18:35, so 6:35 p.m. That's Sydney time. Now, I know in Sydney, New Year's Eve, daylight saving, they are 3 hours ahead of Perth. So in Perth time is going to be what? 15, so 3 hours less.